feel then, right? Because you need to release pain for it to change. So how does it, just ask yourself, how does a child process emotion? It's pretty obvious, isn't it? As a child, remember the child learning to walk? He experiments. He falls flat on his face. He doesn't then store it all up. He cries. Now that he's cried, the emotional pain is gone. What does he do next? He gets up and experiments again. Really simple process, isn't it? Experiments, when he fails, falls flat on his face, he hurts, he cries, finishes crying, finishes hurting, gets up, experiments again with it. And it's a seamless process of learning in that place, where we're not afraid to take actions, we're not afraid to experiment, we're not afraid to make mistakes. That's the place we're in. So how the child processes emotion is how you need to be able to process emotion in order to do this. With one exception, and that is there's false beliefs and false definitions of love that also need to be accessed. But you are a adult now with awareness. So you can see the false beliefs and you can see the false definitions of love, and you feel them in your body. And every time your body starts to get tired, exhausted, or it starts to hurt somewhere, you know, I've got a fear. I've got a fear related to that particular area that's shutting me down in that particular way. And all I need to do is find this fear and release it, and then I'll be in the pain. I'll be able to feel the grief associated with this fear, that this fear is covering and keeping under control. And I'll be able to then feel that grief and fear. So the process, so if we look at the process for a moment of what release is, it's really quite simple. It's feel the fear of each, better write that so you can see that, each untruth or lack of love. In other words, down here, in this area here, we've got false beliefs. They're untruths that we believe. And here we've got definitions of love which are false. So that's where lack of love has influenced us to believe that certain things that lack love are love. So we have a warped, the world's view of love, very much the opposite oftentimes, most of the time, of God's view of love. And we start to feel the world's view of love as being wrong. So we see it as a lack of love, we don't call it love anymore. And for the sake of another word, let's call it, that's what it is. And both of those things are fears. False expectations appearing real. So at the moment, before we process them, they appear real to us, and then we identify them, we release the actual fear itself as an emotion. It's got to be as an emotion. We release the fear as an emotion. Once we release the fear as an emotion, the underlying emotional pain, grief, pops up. And you'll find it will just pop up without any control. Don't need to control it. Pain automatically is felt. Don't even need to try. It was the fear keeping the pain down. Once you deal with the fear, pain just comes out. So, you know, for each individual thing, it might take a few weeks to become aware of it. It might take another few weeks for you to actually go through the processing of the fear of that particular thing. And once you've processed the fear, and that's going to require shaking and feeling quite stressed and whatever, and the more you're resistive to that process, the more your physical ailments will increase for a while. And then you go over the hump, if you like, and now As soon as you're over the hump and you've released the fear, bang, pain just start crying and away you go, and how long it takes, and you finish when it finishes. David?
So with the analogy yesterday with the key, then that fear there is the key to that room
of pain.
Yep.
Correct.
Yep. Thank you.
That's it. Yep. So you feel the key in a lock. You know, once you feel the fear, doors open. I'm in the pain, and you don't have to, you know, think about it or work out what it is. You just feel it. And sometimes you won't know what it is because some of it's related to times when you weren't even cognizant. You know, when it happened when you were little, as a child. And other times you'll know what it is because you did it to yourself. You took an action. You did something that created a sin that created your pain. And you'll be very aware of those times, of what that's about. All right. Yep. If we come down to Laura, and then across the page next to her.
Why do your physical ailments increase in that process?
Yeah, it's very simple. Reason why is we're going along like what we consider to be normal. We're not aware. When our fear kicks in, we try to resist our fear, right? And it's the resistance of fear that creates our ailments.
Yeah.
Right? And they're all physical, can be physical ailments as well as emotional ones. But our physical ailments in particular are all created by the resistance to the actual pain itself. And that's all about the fear that we have. So it's a resistance to feeling the fear. Once we start feeling the fear, we usually are at the peak of when, you know, the worst point in terms of our physical feelings. Yeah. And then during that point, we start feeling our fear and we really let ourselves feel it. We've released enough fear and all of a sudden the pain will come out. So now your ailments, so if this is a scale of ailments, physical ailments, where you don't notice them and so you're in denial of them, then the fear kicks in and now you're starting to notice them and usually you're trying to push them down, right? So this is where, you know, you're working against yourself. Yeah. But everyone does that until they get to the point where their desire is to feel that fear. Once the desire kicks in and you want to feel that fear, you feel it, and that releases the blockage to feeling the underlying pain, and also releases, immediate releases any problem, any energy block. So you see, pain in your body is all about energy blocks in your body. Yeah. You know, many of you are taking like supplements, vitamins, whatever. But the problem with that is often you're adding toxins to your body under those circumstances. Because what's really happening is your body is like this spirit body. Remember, it's your spirit body that governs the problems in your physical body. So if your spirit body is blocked in a certain area, so my spirit body at the moment is blocked in my throat, my shoulders, my eyes, and my bowel. Does that make sense? So any one of those areas, there's a blockage of the flow of emotion, a blockage of the flow of energy. Results. As a result, your physical body will experience pain in those particular areas. You follow? Mm-hmm. And then as you deal with the fear associated with the particular problem, that will release. And once that releases, you'll feel the pain will immediately go away. Immediately go away. I'm talking about you go from thinking you're going to die for something sometimes to thinking, wow, that was I feel pretty good now. I've seen people, like, give an example. A person I know developed a thyroid problem and their whole throat just swole up. She went to the hospital. They put her in surgery. They told her that the next day they'd have to do emergency surgery on her and she'd have to then take thyroid medication for the rest of her life. She went home. She guessed that it was about the fact that she hadn't confessed to her husband her infidelities. She did that, and the very next day, her entire thing was gone. She went back to the hospital, because she had a booking, and they said they must have misdiagnosed her. All right, that's what happens. You resist until you surrender. All of a sudden things change. Make sense, Laura?
Yeah.
Yep.
Thanks.
So many of you are freaked out when your body starts hurting, right? You are.
Yeah.
When my body starts hurting, I go, I must be getting closer. That's good. Paige.
Just following on from Laura's question, I was going to ask, is this exactly what's been happening to you in the last couple of weeks?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm getting closer and closer to some core emotional issues that I've been trying to get close to for quite some years. And it's really good. I know that I'm getting there. I know that after this group is done, I'll be pretty close. And if I give it another few more months working through my fears, I'm going to have an increase in pain probably till I deal with the fears associated with some of these issues. Once I deal with the fears, things will change quite strongly. Now, it might take longer than that. I don't know how long it will take because they're quite severe issues. They're issues that began as a part of our, their return process. And as a result, like I had a bowel operation when I was 2, I had a part of my bowel removed then. So I've always had problems right from that time. So I'm dealing with those issues now, the real child issues. And yeah, so to me, I'm looking forward to that because that means my worth will be very different afterwards. That means my body will feel really good afterwards. Yeah. So sometimes I look in the mirror and go, you don't look too bad, but gee, you feel terrible, And I do sometimes feel really bad.
But you trust the process.
Yeah.
So the fever and all those things, you just ride through it because you trust the process.
Yeah. The more you fear it, of course, the worse it gets. So, I already fear it quite badly, otherwise I wouldn't have the intense pain that I have. But if I feared it even worse, it would be even worse. You know what I mean? You relax with it. And because you've dealt with the terror that was above it, you're not terrified of it anymore. You're not searching for medications and all those kind of things, Yeah.
Cool, thanks.
Patty, if you just come forward.
Does that same kind of physical ailment feedback loop happen when we're in the top part of the diagram?
Certainly it does.
Okay.
Yeah, certainly. It happens everywhere in the entire process, certainly. But the problem is, for the majority of us, the higher it is in the process, the less sensitive we are to pain. So it usually requires more intense amounts of pain before we actually do anything about it. And also, the higher we are in the process, the more determined we are to use addictions to avoid pain. So we revert to our addictions as a result, whatever those addictions are. Whereas down here, we're not doing that. So you're not reverting to addictions in order to avoid the pain. Yeah. If we go to Lani on this side, just straight to Lani, and Phoebe on this side.
It seems like without God and without real faith, this whole process is going to be impossible. It's
not impossible, but there are certain emotions that you will need to deal with that will be impossible without God. So it's not impossible to deal with a lot of your personal pain and so forth, because this is what a lot of spirits have to do anyway in this process. See, we haven't yet engaged the laws of repentance or forgiveness, have we, in this process? We need to talk about those later. But so it's the same process that spirits would need to engage to get to the 6th sphere, just they do it usually a lot slower. It takes many years, if not centuries, for that to occur. So it's the same kind of process, but you won't be able to address all of your major sins, because remember we said right at the beginning that the major pain we have and the major sins we commit are all to do with our relationship with God. And of course, a person who doesn't involve God is not addressing those emotional issues. You follow? So of course, if we're not addressing those emotional issues, then obviously there will be that pain left over. The pain of not addressing emotional issues associated with our beliefs about God.
And that becomes part of the engine.
That drives all of my behaviour. Yeah, so for a 6th sphere spirit, the engine that drives their behaviour is their belief that they are a God, that they are a part of God, that they are a fragment of God, if you like, that they can create and do whatever they want, and they don't so much develop it. And I'm talking about even ones who are Christian or or Muslim or Jews or whoever did have a concept of God. If they don't develop emotionally this relationship with God, then they still don't have a relationship with God. And so they're still seeing themselves as individual being without, and they don't have the relationship, so they haven't addressed their pains associated with God. Does that make sense? They've usually addressed some of them though, because once you get to the sixth sphere, you're aware of this, of how wonderful creation is. So you do have some concept that, well, somebody must have put all this system together, But it is possible to be a atheist and still exist in the sixth sphere. Yep. Once you've worked through your own things, you've developed natural love to the pinnacle of natural love, and so it's possible to be there. Yeah. Okay, now we're over at Phoebe.
Yeah, I just had a clarifying question from following on from Paddy about the fear creating illness, and then how you deal with that in the facade section. Using the example of your friend with the throat thing. Mm-hmm. So she hadn't dealt with any of the facade. No,
but she was suppressing the truth. Remember, the facade's about suppressing truth. So a lot of our illnesses do occur here because we're suppressing truth, for example. And in her case, she was actively suppressing truth, not wishing to speak of it. And as a result, she was aware of what she wasn't willing to speak of.
So her illness wasn't created by her pain?
No.
Ah, okay.
It's by her avoidance of telling the truth. So it's by her facade.
So that's why she was able to deal with it without having deconstructed anything?
Yeah, because there's still the underlying reasons why she was unfaithful that needed to be addressed that she hasn't addressed, actually.
Ah, I see, yeah.
Does that make sense?
Makes more sense.
She hasn't addressed those, but she has at least addressed telling the truth to her husband.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
An addiction, rather than just stay in your fear, stay in the feeling. So the way you handle fear, so I should probably put there, the way I handle fear needs to be a way where I accept it, rather than just trying to push it down all the time, trying to reject it all the time in this place. All right? The more I reject my fear, remember my fear of blocking my pain, so the more I reject my fear, the more slowly I will release pain. And the goal of this is to release it as fast as you're able, isn't it? To release it as fast as you can, because the more you release, the better you're going to feel. And the better everyone else around you will feel about you as well. Or they'll feel better things from you. You'll be more capable of love. Yep, so that's a really important part. I've also got, yes, that's right. I've also got the importance of, remember, your fears are your false beliefs and your issues regarding love and truth, your false beliefs about love and truth. So obviously remember what the fear is. It's where you believe false things. So the antidote to that is what kind of truth? Yes. So God's truth is going to become more and more important to you here. God's truth is the thing you're sort of focused on. You're not interested in listening anymore to what that person thinks about it, what this person thinks about it, and what this person wants to justify the fact that you've got that problem. You know you've got the problem, it's causing an issue inside of you. You know that, it's hurting other people, you know that. God's truth is the thing I need. So now I'm pretty open. I'm longing for God's truth, praying to God a lot now, where I'm longing from my heart for him to show me what the truth is. Even if I'm afraid, I'm still, because the key to dealing with this fear is letting myself feel the fear as an emotion, but also allowing myself to feel what God's truth is about it. Now, I've found that quite difficult with some issues regarding self in terms of worth. Most of us want to believe the world's worth, definitions of worth, and it's a pretty big issue, the issue of worth on the planet. So you're going to have some struggles there. And if you have issues of superiority inside of you that are linked to pain, then obviously you're going to find acceptance of God's truth quite hard at times. It's about being humble to that. Right? Okay, is there any questions about that, or you pretty much right there? And then the last thing I wanted to talk about was this, what we, and it's really about handling fear still, but we just want to just make a note about this, the way in which we handle physical ailments in our body. So what should we call it? Should we just call it medications or whatever? Now, we need to take medications when we're unwilling to actually experience things emotionally. So I'm not saying to you don't take your medication or anything like that. It's up to you what you do with your life. But the medication's purpose is to suppress the underlying causes and just focus on suppressing the pain itself. So you need to understand that. So what we want to really do instead is we want to find the cause and release it, and then we haven't got the problem at all, and you won't need the medication anymore. Right? That's what you want to do. So there's been times when you feel tempted to go for the medication or go for the vitamins or go for what it is that you feel will supplement you. But in this place, if you're really humble, you go, hang on a sec, all this is doing is taking me away from how I'm really feeling, and it's not going to really help me in the long run. And unless my situation is very serious physically, there's no reason why I need to do that. Now, if my situation is very serious, that indicates that I'm way up here still and I'm nowhere near this process. So if I've got serious physical ailments, then I'm way up here. I need to do that first. And in fact, if you don't do that, it's highly likely you'll die without your medication. Does that make sense? Because your body will worsen as if you take yourself off the medication and there's no, and on top of that you refuse to address the addictions, you're basically asking for trouble there. Your life will definitely be shortened if you do that. Whereas down here, if you, in this area here, you go off your medications, it's like your body's relieved. Get rid of another toxin, you know. So there's much more relief in your body there. Kerry, you would like to ask?
So would most of the world's major ailments, like cancer and thing, be all in the facade? Yep.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yeah, you'll find if you deal with that, the majority of your personal ailments will disappear. Right? Well, it's really if you deal with that above, because remember your terror has a large effect on personal ailments as well, and drives your facade actually. Right, so a lot of your ailments will disappear. That's what's happened for myself. A lot of my ailments all disappeared, regular sicknesses all gone. You know, it's only specific things that I'm avoiding, that I'm aware I'm avoiding, that cause a problem for my body. Some of them chronically even, depending on my level of fear.
Yep.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Sherry, over this side. I've still got one very important point to raise with you, so I just keep it on time.
What does it mean if you, say, change your diet and then you get quite a lot better?
Well, a lot of times changing your diet is about doing something that is now more harmonious with love of self, right? So usually when people change their diet and get better, it's because now they've chosen a diet that's more harmonious with loving yourself. So of course that's going to have an immediate but not a long-term effect on your body. And this is why people might feel an immediate effect, and then after a few years they don't notice that effect anymore, and in fact their body starts degrading again. In fact, this is what happens to many people who go on vegan diets. They initially feel better for a short period of time, and then the different emotional holes that they have that prevent them from actually addressing things are still there, and those are still not being engaged, and they start losing weight and looking drawn and feeling terrible, and then they feel like they've got to go to the doctor, and he says, look, your iron's deficient and this is deficient and that's deficient and this is deficient, all because of the addictions and everything that we're not addressing and the pains we're not releasing. And as a result of that, we get sicker and sicker until we, usually what we do there is we decide to go back on a diet that we had before.
Yeah.
Right? Which is actually not the course of action we need to take from God's perspective. What we need to do is address the causes, which are all emotional.
Yeah.
And most of us refuse to address the causes emotionally. So we go back to the diet to try and prevent the issue.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.